I would appraise this book actually at about $40,000.
Let me tell you, you are lucky.
You probably saved my job.
Well, you can thank me with some chocolate or something.
Rebecca Romney seemed like the perfect rare book expert on Pawn Stars. Calm, smart, and trusted by Rick Harrison himself. But in 2014, everything changed. A stolen book worth $40,000 appeared on the show. Then the FBI stepped in and questioned Rebecca about how stolen books made it onto national TV. By January 2015, she vanished from the show without explanation. No goodbye, no official statement. Today, we're uncovering what really happened behind the cameras and why the truth was buried for so long. Rebecca Romney was born on April 6th, 1985 in the warm desert city of Phoenix, Arizona. Back then, nothing about her life pointed toward rare books or million-dollar manuscripts. In fact, she once joked that old books were boring relics for old men. Her dream was to become a philosopher or maybe a translator. She loved languages, ideas, and deep conversations, things that had nothing to do with the auction world. She would one day dominate. At 18, she went to college thinking she'd spend her life in classrooms. By 22, she had mastered 5.5 languages: English, French, Japanese, Latin, Ancient Greek, and even some Old English. She taught herself by studying for 12 hours a day. She once translated a 300 BC Greek papyrus for a university exam and aced it. Professors were shocked, and her skills would later help her uncover forgeries that could have cost collectors millions. Between 2003 and 2007, she studied philosophy and classical studies at Brigham Young University. While her classmates were choosing safer majors, Rebecca was busy debating free will in 4-hour seminars and decoding ancient texts in their original forms. She took extra classes, pulled off a perfect GPA, and graduated with honors. Her thesis involved comparing 2th-century Greek fragments of Plato's Republic. Nobody knew it then, but this strange mix of philosophy and ancient language was preparing her for something incredible. In 2007, just after graduation, she made a mistake that changed her life. Rebecca applied for what she thought was a basic management job at Bowman Rare Books in Philadelphia. But when she walked into the interview, she realized she'd misunderstood the job posting. It was for a rare book specialist, something she knew nothing about. She almost walked out. Instead, she stayed, admitted she had no experience, and got the job anyway. Her language skills caught their attention, and that was enough. Within months, she was handling books worth more than most homes. A Shakespeare folio from 1623, a page from the Gutenberg Bible, first editions of Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica. She was thrown into a world where one mistake could cost a fortune. By 2010. Just 3 years later, she was promoted to gallery manager in Las Vegas. She was 26. By 2013, at age 29, she became the youngest senior director in the company's history. That role gave her control over catalogs, auctions, and private sales totaling over $10 million a year. One offer clients paid $300,000 for a book printed in 1472. And she wasn't just good at selling. She was uncovering fakes no one else could spot. Rick Harrison didn't find Rebecca Romney through a casting call. He already knew her. Back in 2007, she joined Bowman Rare Books when they opened a location in Las Vegas. By 2010, she was running the place. Rick had been running Gold and Silver Pawn since 1989, and the world of rare books and antiques in Vegas wasn't that big. Their paths crossed at local events, through mutual contacts, and through a shared obsession with history. So when Rick needed someone who truly understood old paper, not just books but documents, signatures, handwriting, he didn't ask producers to find an expert. He picked up the phone and called her. That call led to her first appearance on Pawn Stars in 2011, not as a hired TV personality, but as someone already trusted off camera. Their friendship grew after filming. They even went on double dates. And fans had no idea that a comic book smart expert on screen wasn't just a good fit. She was handpicked. When she stepped in front of the camera for the first time in Season 4, April 4th, 2011, she was handed a stack of Civil War-era papers. Among them was a Confederate bond from 1861 that could be worth $5,000 if real. She examined the paper texture, the ink, even the way it had been printed. In less than 10 minutes, she exposed a forged signature that dropped the value from 10 grand to a few $100. Viewers were glued to the screen. She spoke with confidence, quietly cross-checking details while cameras rolled. By the end of the episode, she wasn't just another guest expert. She was a book lady, and she stole the show. Ratings jumped by 15%. From that point on, if the pawn shop got anything made of paper, books, letters, historical documents, Rebecca was the one they called. Between 2011 and 2020, she appeared in around 30 episodes, with her most active run happening in the first 4 years. In that time, she appraised everything from a $2,000 replica of a 1493 Columbus letter to an original broadside of the Declaration of Independence worth $15,000 in 2013. She stunned everyone by authenticating what turned out to be notes linked to Edgar Allan Poe, hidden inside a manuscript thought to be worthless. She even handled 19th century slave trade papers and explained how to place a value on something so deeply tied to pain and history. By 2014, she was doing nearly 3/4 of the show's paper-related appraisals. Some of her calls were hard. She once debunked a fake Shakespeare folio that someone believed was worth 10 grand. It wasn't. What made her stand out wasn't just what she knew. It was how she delivered it. Rebecca never raised her voice. She never looked rattled. She could drop a bombshell like revealing that a $50,000 book was part of a forgery ring from the 1800s and still sound like she was calmly explaining what's for lunch. That became her thing. While other experts made a show of their excitement, she kept everything steady and clear. In 2012, Chumley almost lost his job over a book he bought without checking anything. He paid $500 for a signed copy of Charles Lindbergh's 1927 autobiography. We then called him Mark Lindbergh by mistake. Everyone in the shop thought it was fake. Rick even said if the signature didn't check out, Chumley's next day off would be permanent. Rebecca, Romney, stepped in again. She pulled out a verified copy and compared the signature, pointing out how Lindbergh had changed his autograph style as he became more famous. Turns out it was real. She valued it at $1,500, triple the price Chumley had paid. Not only was it a solid profit, it also saved Chumley from being fired. One tiny signature turned a near disaster into one of his rare wins. Another time, someone came in with what looked like Revolutionary War bonds, claiming they were worth a fortune. But when Rebecca took a closer look, the truth was far stranger. These weren't revolutionary. They were Confederate. And they weren't just rare, they were missing. These documents had vanished after the Civil War ended in 1865. They were linked to stolen Southern assets that were loaded onto the USS Republic, a ship that sank in a hurricane that same year. The wreck was discovered in 2003, and by 2005, some of its corroded contents had been recovered. These bonds were part of that history, potentially worth $50,000, but they also came with legal baggage. Selling stolen items could land the shop in court. Police got involved. Rebecca's careful research kept the shop from buying something that might have turned into a lawsuit, proving that sometimes history comes with consequences. Then there was a time someone thought they'd hit the jackpot with a Shakespeare First Folio from 1623. Real copies of that book have sold for millions. One even fetched $9.98 million in 2020. The seller's copy looked impressive, but when Rebecca examined it, the flaws started to show. The paper didn't age right. The ink looked too clean, and it was missing tiny flaws that real 400-year-old books always have. She believed it was a fake, possibly inspired by the so-called false folio of 1619, a misleading collection made by William Jaggard and Thomas Pavier. Even those are valuable, but this one wasn't close. If Rick had bought it, the shop could have lost thousands. Her sharp eyes saved them from making one of the costliest mistakes in Pawn Stars history. But sometimes the items were as real as they come and just as powerful. That's what happened when someone brought in a first edition of On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. The book came out on November 24th, 1859, and it sold out on its first day. Only 250 copies were printed. Rebecca took one look at the green cloth binding, the diagrams, and the ads dated June 1859, and she knew it was authentic. She valued it at $75,000. The impact of Darwin's book couldn't be overstated. It reshaped science and religion forever. Even Copernicus and Newton hadn't caused such a shock. Some copies, especially those with Darwin's personal notes, have sold for over $500,000. Later editions aren't nearly as valuable. For example, the 1862nd edition, where Darwin removed his odd whale bear story, is only worth around $9,500. But that first printing changed everything. And this one sitting in the shop was the kind of find that most collectors dream about. Between 2011 and 2015, she became a fan favorite, especially after she evaluated a first edition of Frankenstein in an episode that lit up online forums. That book was worth $20,000, and so was the reaction it triggered. People started calling her the Book Whisperer, and she quickly gained tens of thousands of followers. Viewers begged producers to give her more screen time. Some even asked for a spin-off. But not everything was perfect behind the scenes. In 2014, an episode of Pawn Stars aired that would quietly set off one of the show's strangest and most unsettling rumors. A man walked into a gold and silver pawn shop, claiming to hobby a rare 1841 edition of the Book of Mormon. Rebecca Romney, the show's rare book expert, examined it carefully and estimated its value at $40,000, but the seller wanted $100,000. After some back and forth, Rick Harrison managed to buy it for just $24,000. On the surface, it looked like another good deal for the shop, but then things started to unravel. Whispers spread that a book was stolen from the Marriott Library at the University of Utah. Not long after the episode aired, federal agents allegedly stepped in. The FBI, according to these rumors, seized the book and left the pawn shop with nothing. There was never an official statement, and no charges were made public. But the story gained momentum through Reddit threads and YouTube videos. In late 2014, around the time the FBI supposedly got involved, Rebecca Romney was said to have been questioned by federal agents. According to those whispers, the agents wanted to know how stolen historical books could make it onto national television without raising alarms. This wasn't an isolated case. In 2015, the FBI had already returned stolen books to the National Library of Sweden. Earlier in 2005 and 2006, they had Doris Forbes Smiley, who had stolen millions of dollars worth of rare maps. Romney was never accused of wrongdoing, but some believe the questioning deeply affected her. She had become known for confidently appraising books worth thousands. Now her judgment was under a shadow. Then came January 10, 2015.